Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Maude and I have both prepared 3 names to go over. We did not compare them. I do know one of yours.
Yeah, told you one.
You told me one of them. There's a very good chance that somewhere our list is going to overlap. So, do you want to start with the one that you've already told me, or do you want to start at a different place? I can start. The possibilities.
I've got a different one to start with because
okay.
This one that I want to go with first is like the biggest fish, the biggest player that I've named for a potential target for the Sens.
Can I ask real quick? Did you go all forwards?
I did.
Okay, me too. Yeah.
I did mostly just because I don't think this team thinks that it needs a defensive upgrade.
Yep, that's fair.
Like the only thing, and really the only thing I would say on defense is that I worry about left defense depth if anyone gets injured, but
for sure.
It's not as it's surprisingly
100%.
not as deep as the right side. We actually do have bodies on the right side when everyone's healthy. Regardless of how good they are, Hamonic, of course. But yeah, so I'll go with the biggest name first. Specifically, though, before I go into that, I'll say that I was looking at the cap because the Sens really do not have that much space. So I was looking around on the Puckpedia manager mode, and if you put Cousins on LTIR, you also have Gregor and JBD on there. I think Noah Gregor will come back probably after the break, but at that point, he doesn't have much of a cap hit, so you would just swap him in and send down like Zach Ostapchuk or Matthew Highmore or something like that. That wouldn't affect the cap too much. It would be like roughly the same. If you have all those guys on LTIR at the time of the trade deadline, or even right now, it would give the Sens 2.45 million in cap space with room to have one extra skater. And that's a little tough because usually teams have like 2 or 3 extra guys on the roster. However, the one thing is that most of the Sens games for the rest of the season are at home. They've played almost all of their road trips already. So they could do this. They could kind of run with a smaller roster with not so many extra players because it's so many home games that if you do have injuries, you should be able to bring someone up from Belleville pretty easily, right? So I do think it's possible that we could see the Sens really push that cap space that they have just because they don't have any of those huge road trips coming up where you would be screwed if you couldn't call anyone up. But the big name player that I was thinking is Brock Besser, and we don't know if the Canucks are going to sell or buy at the deadline. They've done a mix of selling and buying because obviously they had to sell off JT Miller and then they bought for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. So they're doing kind of a retool. The thing with Besser is even if they're trying to make the playoffs still this season, they may not be able to get him to a contract extension. So that's why I could see him being available, even if the Canucks are in a playoff spot. And we specifically just need goal scorers on this team. I think having Brock Besser lining up next to Tim Stützle would be pretty damn sick. The thing is, you would need Vancouver to retain 50% of the remaining contract, which would get him down to 3.325 million. And you would also need Vancouver to take salary back. In this case, I was thinking they could take Forsberg's contract, and then you could take back one of their minor league goalies. Like there's that Seelovs guy who does not have good numbers in the NHL this year, but he did win them a playoff series against Nashville last season. So and then you send him to Belleville and then call up Merilainen to be the backup. So it would require a little bit of movement in terms of money to squeeze Brock Besser in, but I think that's like the best option if they want to go big name hunting. And also, I don't know how good the return would be for Vancouver, assuming that it's a pure rental. I think if other teams are able to reach an agreement with Besser and his agent and get a sign-in trade, then those teams will probably offer more since they're getting him to an extension, and they could probably outbid the Sens because the Sens don't have a lot of picks and prospects available. But if no one is really looking like they're obviously going to be able to sign Besser to an extension as a pure rental, I think that could be an interesting move. So what do you think about that?
The first player on my list was Brock Besser.
Yay, we're on the same page. I love it.
it definitely felt like it was a lot more attainable when it sounded like Vancouver's going to ship everybody off, because it was like, oh, JT Miller's being a problem with Elias Pettersson, but it sounds like they're going to send out both of them anyway. Now that Miller's gone, I think they're just going to
Yeah,
hang
they're
on to
turning
guys
it
and try to
around a
make the
bit too.
playoffs. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know how likely that is. He also has a 10-team no trade list, so I don't know how likely it is that Ottawa isn't on there. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is the case with anyone though. Like if the Sens are buying at the deadline, they're heading to the playoffs, and it's someone who's on an expiring deal on a team that's not making the playoffs, I think you waive just for the shot, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and he already plays in Canada too, so
yeah,
if it's a pure rental, it's possible.
yeah. I love the idea of, because I think, like, with all the line jumping that's been going on, there's been a little bit of Norris Giroux chemistry being found there. So I think that like a Kachuk, Stutzla, Besser, Giroux, Norris, Batherson top six would be
Yeah,
just.
that would be
Oh,
filthy.
now who's the second line center though? Because Giroux would be playing
Probably
right
Norris, right?
wing. You keep Norris there, but then like I guess you
You
could
would
you
have
could
to
stick
flip.
Batherson on the left.
Yeah, you'd have to flip either Batherson or Giroux to the
Yeah.
left, or get crazy and move up really Greg, and then and then move one of those
Yeah.
guys down to the third line. Travis Green
Yeah.
has liked to try to spread the offense out like that lately, whether that's a good idea or not, but that
Yeah.
could be a possibility.
Yeah. And I think worth mentioning as well on my list, they're all gonna be guys that require the other team holding on to some salary. Just because what
Yeah.
this team desperately needs is a scoring winger, and they
Hmm.
aren't cheap. They just like, regardless of the
Yeah.
cost of trading, they're just not cheap players. They're not cheap contracts.
Guys who score goals get paid, and Brock Besser had 40 goals last year. He's not on that pace this year, but
Uh,
18 goals would still have him near the top of the Sens. Only I
yeah,
think Brady hit 20. What, right? He's the only one who would have more.
yeah. I think he's on pace for a good like 30 right now, which like there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that would be the best possible player that the Sens could squeeze in at the deadline. In terms of fit and in terms of like caliber of player, it would be a pure rental though, I think, because
Yeah,
I did a little bit of looking ahead to how much cap space the Sens might have next year. And they don't have a lot of players to re-sign that would cost very much money, mostly just depth guys who won't be making large salaries. But the key question mark is Claude Giroux. You would probably keep him. You would probably want him to take a pay cut so that the Sens can spend more money on other players. I did a little bit of a just a sort of preview on maybe what the Sens could have in cap space next year. If you give Claude Giroux $4 million for 1 year, which is a decent pay cut, if you sign Adam Gaudette for $1.5 million, Cousins for $1 million, Clevin for $2 million, Matt and Paolo $1 million, and then you have Merlainen for like $800K as the backup, then with the projected cap, you would have about $6.4 million in cap space, and I don't think that would
okay.
be enough. I don't think that would be
Yeah,
enough to re-sign Besser. He's probably going to
no,
be closer to like the 8 million range. It's pretty good though. And if Claude Giroux pulls like a Jason Spezza and just signs for like dirt cheap because he wants to win with with his hometown team, then maybe it could happen. But
yeah.
I think Brock Besser would be a pure rental, but one that I would be interested in seeing if the Sens could win the bidding war for him.
Yeah, and actually with that, I'll just jump into the next player on my list, because this is someone who would fit under that cap a little bit better.
Okay.
I have no idea if he's available, and anything I've seen online has been, oh, Tampa really wants this guy. He's still under contract next year at 4.75, but Alex Tuck, I think, is a very interesting
Oh, I
choice.
forgot that his name was out there. So
Yeah.
I didn't even really
Now,
consider him, but you're right. You're
the
right. There was a
problem
rumor.
the problem is he's got a 5-team no trade list, and he's from Syracuse. He grew up a Sabres fan. So I don't think he wants to go anywhere. But the Sabres are in last in the East, and like, can you get much closer to home than Ottawa, if not Buffalo?
Yeah. How much term does he have on his contract, I
He's
wonder?
got 1 year left.
Okay, so if he did waive for Ottawa, then it's another situation, kind of like Besser, where you would need to work out an extension after the fact, or it would just be a rental.
Or
But he
sorry,
has an additional year, right?
he signed through next season as well
Okay,
at
so
4.75.
maybe like maybe he would waive for Ottawa, but maybe he's an American boy and wants to stay in America. I don't know.
I have no idea. He'd be a great fit too. I think he would complement Stützle and Kachuk so well as
Hmm.
well. I think he'd fit in really, really well with Beth in that same kind of spot that Besser would take. I don't think he'd be taking over the goal scoring as much as Besser probably would in that case, but I do think Tuck would be a great fit. And like I don't know, like the question is like Buffalo was so close 2 years ago. Like, do they want to blow it up now that they're about to hit 14 years since the playoffs? Like, what are
Yeah,
I don't know what they're gonna do.
I think it depends on whether or not the players want to stay. It's like if Alex Tuck is like this place sucks, this team sucks, I want to go, then you got to get rid of him. But
Yeah,
also he is like pretty clearly one of their best players, like him, Thompson, and Dahlin. Is just like the easy top three on that team, so he might also want to stay and try to be part of the solution. I
yeah,
figure it's probably a situation where they would keep him into next year, and then if they really can't turn it around next year, then you ship him off.
yeah.
But it's probably his name is out there in the rumors because if they traded him with an extra year on his contract, they would get like an absolute haul back for him, right?
You got to think, and that's another reason why I think that I don't know if that's a possibility for Ottawa because with the Sens, as soon as a team puts up a first, you can't outbid them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is even with Brock Besser, you would have to give up a first plus a little bit more, definitely. And I think Alex Tuck, because he has term on his contract, you would need to give up way more than that. And I don't know if the Sens could meet that price. But you are
Yeah.
right in that in terms of the team fit, that could be great. It could be a perfect fit.
Yeah, I do feel like the Sens are going to go into this deadline ignoring the fact that they have a first because I think if they make the playoffs, regardless if they have like if they end up with like the 18th overall pick, I think you just got to say, okay, here, let's get rid of this one.
Yeah, I think I've been hearing that next year's draft is stronger, right? So
Yeah,
it's a tough decision because if you keep the pick for this year, you still have more time to try to convince Gary Bettman to lighten the penalty. But also, if they think this draft year is not very good and we make the playoffs, then I wouldn't be mad if they just gave up this year's too. So
for
that's the
sure.
thing. That's the thing. If the Sens do trade a first, they're gonna have to probably have conditions on the pick saying that like, oh, we'll trade you this year's first unless we decide to give it up, and then you'll get next year's first or something like that too. That's something to consider. Or they could just give up. They could trade like the 2026 first, lottery protected, and then just give up this year's first for the penalty. It's there's some options with that. That
Definitely.
there's if they do move a first at all, it's definitely going to be conditional, hinging on that. I think.
Definitely. I think you're dead on with that. And yeah, like I think we both have Brock Besser at the top because that feels like a much more likely outcome than a lot of the others just because he is on an expiring deal. Like on an expiring deal. He's a well-known goal scorer that kind of feels like a perfect fit if Vancouver wants to move him. Alex Tuck definitely feels like more of a dream scenario. Like I don't think it's as likely, but who do you have as your second player?
So shooting a little bit lower, a player that I would hope that you wouldn't have to give up a first round pick for. Both of my two selections remaining are in that category where they're like this guy maybe, but the other guy's definitely not. Ryan Donato, who's been talked about a lot, having an absolute heater of a season for Chicago. He's just like getting a bunch of ice time because who the hell did they have to play over there? But he's making good use of it. Uh, Expiring UFA, which is good. Then you're not locked into any future money unless you do want to re-sign him if he's a good fit. But he's currently only making a $2 million cap hit, so you don't need Chicago to retain on that. But if you're looking to make multiple moves, they could, and that would help a little bit. But if you take his full $2 million cap hit, the Sens would be left with about like just under 800K in cap space, again with one extra skater on the roster. And to me, with Donato, it just comes down to the stats and like the just well-rounded game that it seems like he plays from looking at the stats. 19 goals he scored again tonight would be second on the Sens. 18 assists, would be 7th on the team, and I believe 5th among forwards because Sanderson and Chabot are up there on
Right.
assists as well. 8 power play points would be pretty useful for the second power play unit.
Yes. Oh my god.
118 shots on goal is the key stat for me, not just the goals, but 118 shots on goal would rank 5th on the team, 3rd among forwards, because again, Sanderson and Chabot shoot the puck a lot from the point. And we need a shooter, especially to play with Tim Stützle. And also, what I think that Steve Staios and Travis Green will like is he also has 88 hits, which would be 4th on the Sens. So this guy scores goals and he throws hits and he shoots the puck a lot. And also, despite scoring goals, he's also getting assists too. So I feel like this season, it seems like Ryan Donato can do it all. He's not like a long-term top 6 forward in his career. This is kind of his
Right.
first season where he's really having consistent top 6 level production, which is why I think you could get him at a bit of a lower trade value, because like let me just compare to Brock Besser. I gotta bring it
That's
back up, but
yeah, let's be interesting.
yeah, like Ryan Donato and Brock Besser have like very similar stat lines actually, because Besser, he might have gotten a point tonight, I'm not sure, but HockeyDB has him at 18 goals and 17 assists in 48 games, and obviously he's had way better seasons like that in the past. But Ryan Donato pretty much equals that with 19 goals and 18 assists in 53 games. So a few more games played, but like for a cheaper cap hit and probably cheaper trade value, like I would expect the value on him to be like a second, maybe 2 seconds, or like a second and a third or something like that.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if maybe a team gives a first for him, but and at that point I probably wouldn't go for it. But this guy I think could be a really good option, especially because you can squeeze him into the cap pretty quick, like pretty easily, fit him under the cap.
I think it's a great. I think he's a great choice. Yeah, like especially if you're looking at is he would he be a rental? Is he expiring?
Yes, he would be a rental, and then I think because he's having a career year, he would be due for a raise. But if he fits really well, maybe you could get him around like 4 million or something like that. If he looks like
Yeah.
he would be a good fit in the top 9.
Yeah, I think it makes the most sense. Like I think it's so tough because yeah, like you said, this team has little to no cap space. They don't really have much in the way of future assets to trade away. And like all that talk about like the Sens should trade for Elias Pettersson and trade away Josh Norris in that deal, and like just to make the money work. Like it's so tricky to find. Oh my god, there's like no assets to move. You have no cap space, and you need a top 6 score. Like it's
Yeah,
such a
it's
tough
tough.
position. It's so tough. I think honestly, like I think Ryan Donato is like the most realistic one so far. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would say that my third choice on this list is probably a more realistic get, just because I don't think there will be as much of a bidding war for this player, but also it's a significantly worse get than Ryan Donato. Like it's not
Okay.
as good as he has been performing this year. So
We went opposite directions. I went like the toughest one for my third.
yeah, you're aiming even higher. Want to go for
I'm
now?
Yeah,
Then?
sure. I'm aiming even higher, and the reason it's even higher is because this player is on a really reasonable contract, and is currently on year 3 of 6. And this completely depends on whether or not the team wants to completely blow it up. And it hurts. It hurts that I didn't put Erik Karlsson on my list. My heart wants
Yeah,
it.
I
My
thought
brain
about
says
it, but
no. My brain
yeah,
says it doesn't make
you
sense
gotta
right now.
wait. You gotta wait until he's a UFA and then see if he wants to play one more year for cheap. Like that's the only way I can see him coming back.
Yeah, like the Penguins aren't going to retain 50% on his like because they're 10 because San Jose's holding on to 1.5 for his contract, I think, right, per year. So I think
I believe so.
I think
Yeah.
the Penguins are like, and if you're bringing him in at 50% retained and it's still 5, there's no way. There's no way. So instead of Erik Karlsson, I'm calling the Penguins to ask about Rickard Rakell, and
Okay.
it's
Is
not
he?
going to be
Yeah.
cheap.
Right. Yeah. You said he still has term left.
Yeah, he's on year 3 of 6 at $5 million.
He's been great this year.
He's been great this year. He's been consistently like over his career, he's like a 20-goal guy overall through his career. If you kind of like just average it all out, he's been amazing this year. He's on a very team friendly contract at $5 million, especially if it's someone that you could probably like, honestly, I don't know. I mean, you could put him on the first line with Stützle and Tkachuk. You could stick him on the second line if you want to put him with Batherson and Norris. Like I think he could fit on either one. You might even want to stick him on that top power play if the power play just still can't get things going. I think that's reasonable as well. The problem is the price of acquiring him, because that's going to be a first and stuff. And I don't even know if he's available. It just because didn't the Penguins say they're not trading Crosby? So is that like we're not going to blow it up, or is that just like we're going to play Crosby till he retires around a bunch of nobodies? I don't know what that means, but
if you're keeping Crosby and Malkin and Letang this whole time, I don't really see why you want to sell off the only other good players that are surrounding them. Like maybe they will, but they could use some help to at least keep the games entertaining while they're especially when it's guys with term. Like if Raquel was expiring UFA, then yeah, they definitely trade him like they did with Gensel last year. But like you said, because of that term, it's probably going to cost a lot. Like he would, because of the term, I think he would cost more than Brock Besser would at the deadline. And Tuck maybe not, because I think Tuck's a better player, but he's got less term. So that's the thing. It would be difficult to swing a trade there, I think.
Yeah,
but he's a great player. I would
tough.
love to see the Sens add him.
Yeah, I'd love to just see what's up with that. Give Dubas a call. Say, hey man,
definitely talk to him about it.
Yeah, like are you like selling anyone? Like what's the deal? And I feel like that's
maybe
a similar
Brian
thing
Rust
to Buffalo.
if he wants to sell anyone. Maybe an older player in Brian Rust. Who knows?
Why not? That would have probably made more sense for me to put down. But I was like, who do I ran up my list with? And I was like, I gotta go for the dream. I gotta go big.
I don't know what Rust's contract is anyway. He might also have a lot of term. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just remembered that he exists, and trying to think of like who else Pittsburgh might move.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's not likely. I do think that out of anyone of my three, I feel like Besser's the most likely, which means my list is pretty unlikely. But I think out of yours so far, and you like you said, you have another one, probably the easiest to acquire, you said. But so far, I am like you've completely convinced me on Donato. So
it's funny, yeah. For your list, Besser might be the easiest to acquire, and for my list, he's the hardest to acquire.
We went in different directions, very different directions.
Yeah, before I go into my last player, I'll just give a couple honorable mentions, which is just like teams that are going to be sellers, and these guys are not top six forwards, but if the Sens, instead of adding a top six forward, try to just go the depth route, like I know Bruce Garrioch has mentioned Brandon Tanev as a possibility, especially because Nick Cousins is injured, might not play again this season. Like he would fill that role, is pretty similar player, I think. Scott Lawton is in trade rumors, as always. We know Pierre Dorion liked him. Maybe the new management does as well. And then for my third player, I went with Gustav Nyquist. This is not like the sexy pick or anything like that, because he's having a bad season. But the thing is, it's a bit of a like overcorrection, I think, because last year he had way too good of a season to the point that it made no sense. Last season was 75 points for Gus Nyquist. This year, he only has 9 goals and 11 assists in 52 games. But we know that the Predators suck complete ass, and everybody on that team has way worse offensive numbers than they should, except for like Philip Forsberg. Maybe he's probably still doing pretty good, but everyone else sucks. And Nashville also specifically has no centers. Like they have Ryan O'Reilly, and then can you name their second line center? We played them this week, and can you even name their second line center?
Oh my god, that is such a good question.
Yeah. I know who it is, but I forgot until I was looking this up.
Who's on the second line?
I don't even know if this guy is getting like the second line ice time anymore, but I know that he was like the second line center last year.
This is gonna drop. Okay, hold on.
So my main point here is that I don't think Gus Nyquist is playing with very good players. I would have to look up to see who his most common line mates are, but I don't think he's on the first line.
Is it Colton Sissons?
Now I don't actually know if Colton Sissons has more ice time, but I think Tommy Novak is the player I was thinking of,
Oh,
who
okay.
was also really good last year, but then sucks this year, can't get any points. So I think Nyquist is in a bad situation this year, but we know that he's a good player over the course of his career. Not
Oh
as good
yeah.
as he was last year, but he also shouldn't be as bad as he currently is now. And the thing is, he's signed pretty cheap. If Nashville retains half because the contract is expiring, he would only count 1.6 mil against the cap, and you would still have another 1.2 remaining for a little bit of room, either to add another depth player or just to carry an extra skater on your roster, compared to only having one extra player. I just think this is a likely option because he's having a bad year. I think you could get him for like a third or a fourth round pick.
Yeah.
And he's a veteran. He's like 35 years old. He's had 77 career playoff games. So I think that management will like that, to bring in another veteran player who can try to help lead the team with his experience. So I think cheap acquisition costs and a guy who has been better in the past than he has this season could be like a good buy low opportunity for a rental, you know?
Yeah, I was looking at Nashville and I considered Nyquist just for a second, and then I was like, no, I want to be dumb. I want to be dumb about my list.
Yeah,
Um,
you
God,
shot for the stars.
I did. That 75 points last year is so funny. Um, yeah, honestly, I could see I could see them acquiring both Donato and Nyquist, and I think
It's
it would.
possible, yeah.
I think it'd be a pretty productive deadline if they did that. Um, Even if like you just have to live with David Perron being your second line winger that you like, that feels like an acquisition towards the deadline. That's fine. He's been looking great the last couple of games as far as like, the rest of the team. I think he hasn't looked worse than a lot of guys on the team in these brutal
Yeah,
losses.
for sure. I do think if they got Donato, though, I think Donato would slot in ahead of him, at least to start. I think you would try
Yeah,
Donato in the top six because he's been able to produce top six numbers this season. And then if it doesn't work, then
for
you move him
sure.
down.
Yeah. So you imagine that third line of what, Perron, Pinto, Greg, and then a fourth line of Nyquist, Gaudette, and then like let the other
Probably
guys fight over it.
Amadio.
Yeah, I guess Amadio. I mean, do you want to put Amadio on the fourth line or the third? I guess
Well,
so. That's good depth.
if you
That's
acquire
really good
two
depth.
forwards,
Yeah,
you're not playing him any higher in the lineup than that.
yeah.
So,
That's some good depth. That's
mhm.
some really nice depth. What's Nyquist's contract right now?
It's 3 point something. The retained amount was 1.6 million, so it's like 3.1 or 3.2 or something like that.
I mean, if you can get them to hold on to half of that and give them a
Because that's
third
not a
and
lot of
something.
money. If they retain half of that for the rest of the year, that's not much because there's only like
Yeah,
30
that's
games
true.
left, you know?
It's true.